Finally. What's up guys, Andrew here at my channel Gear Inc., where I get to share what I'm passionate about with you. And my channel is PC Tech, Games, and Gear. And today we are finally getting to our budget gaming streaming build. I know this has been much delayed and I'm gonna go over that. I was actually gonna fit this entire video idea into one video, but honestly it's gonna be too long. So this is part one, which we're gonna go over everything with basically this setup. And then part two will be upgrading the system that I have right now to show you kind of what you can do if you decide to put a little bit of money into it. The idea behind this video is that yes, we have these brand new RTX GPUs coming out, but obviously not all of us have the money to throw down on one of those. Now, if you want to get into gaming and streaming on a PC because you're sick of being a console pleb, yes, I'm a PC elitist, then it's one of those things where you're gonna kind of be out of luck if you're trying to do it on a budget, because there's really not a lot of options if you want to game and stream for sub $200. At least unless you're willing to get a little bit creative and think outside the box. Now, the system that we're building this around is the T3500 from Intel. This is like a 9-10-year-old workstation, basically, that came out when it was new, very high end, cost thousands of dollars, which we're gonna get into what you can get it for today and why using this method is pretty good if you're trying to do this on a budget. Gaming and streaming really requires nowadays that you have at least a 6-core CPU. Now, that's not to say you can't stream with 4-core CPUs, because I've seen people do it. I've seen even people try to stream with Pentiums before. But the reason I created this video was I wanted to do something that anybody could do with very little knowledge and just basically a little bit of work. So this system is interesting in that it accepts an entire slew of Xeon CPUs, specifically ones that you can get right around $20. The one in this system is the X5660, which I picked up over a month ago for 22 bucks. So that's what's sitting in this system right now. Now, when you pop this thing open, one of the things I actually love is how easy it is to get into this case. There's literally just a switch on the top of it and the panel pops off. And what's really interesting is that the CPU and RAM are being passively cooled by this big fan array in the front of it, so there's not actually any air directly blowing on the CPU. We're going to go over heating a little bit later. So using this system, it is going to be possible with that CPU in here to basically build a system for sub $200 that you can game and stream on, depending on what you're playing. Now, I got this locally for $80. One of the reasons that this video was so delayed is that I found one, bought it, and found it cheaper, so returned it, found one, bought it, found it cheaper, returned it. So it took weeks basically. And going into this, know that that's kind of some of the limitations. We'll actually talk about that at the end of the video. The great thing about this build is really, besides being cheap, it's something anybody can do. Rocking in this system, I bought a 750 Ti, remember the one that had mud in it from the video, My GPU Has Mud, from AliExpress, for around 55 bucks. So in total, the system is under $160, and it's gonna allow us to game and stream with some slight compromises, and I'm gonna go over that. But for what you're getting, it's pretty crazy. The reason we went with the Xeon CPU is because it's a 6-core, 12-thread CPU. Now, if you do want to get all those threads, just so you know, you do have to enable that in the BIOS. It's weird. It's just a kind of an older system way of doing it. So make sure you have hyper-threading enabled in the BIOS if you want to see all your threads. So anyway, guys, the reason we do 6 cores, that allows 4 cores for gaming, 2 cores for streaming. That way you're not putting any undue stress on the system. The Xeons only boost up to about 3.3, 3.2 gigahertz, so it's not like it's gonna be running super fast, but I think you're gonna be really shocked at how well it performs. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go over the gaming benchmarks.
Now, the first game that we have here to show off is Counter-Strike. Now, this obviously is an esports title that is played quite a bit, but what's awesome is that you can see that at the highest preset, we're getting average FPS of 98. Now, temps on all these games under load bounce between 80 to about 87 degrees Celsius, so obviously not the best, but pretty impressive considering that we're actually passively cooling this system. Now, the next game on the docket is Overwatch. Now, obviously this is another esports title, and the whole point of this build is something that you can game and stream on, so esports games are really the ones I think that are going to matter. And you can see here that we are having absolutely no trouble getting 93 FPS, which is again fairly impressive considering that this is the highest preset at 1080p. Now, I know most of you are wondering, of course, about Fortnite being the most played esports game right now there is, and honestly, I actually had to drop down to medium preset to get decent FPS. It was way more demanding than I thought. because I really wanted to put some stress on the system and see what it was capable of, I decided to do some benchmarking on Rainbow Six. I actually did some recording for PUBG as well, but unfortunately, just for some reason in the system, I was never able to record it no matter what I was doing. But at least with Rainbow Six, you can see we got an average of 65 FPS at low preset, but unfortunately I was not able to benchmark PUBG. Because I'm sick and I really wanted to push this system, I decided to play The Witcher, which obviously is a well-optimized game, but even so, definitely pushes the threshold of what this system, which again, we are running this with a 750 Ti, a 6-7-year-old GPU. On top of that, this is a 9 to 10-year-old system, and we're still able to get an average of 43 FPS at medium preset with hair works off. So is it the best graphical experience ever? No, and obviously The Witcher 3 is incredibly well optimized, but I mean, it's not a bad experience by any means. Now, personally, I don't like to play a sub 60 FPS, which is why I actually lowered the settings of all these tests if I wasn't able to hit that threshold, but honestly, I would say this is pretty playable.
So that in itself is pretty impressive for a system that is literally 9-10 years old. This thing is almost a decade. I think the Xeon came out, what, 2010, 2011, so maybe not quite that, but yeah, like 8-9 years. So this is a really old system, but those benchmarks to me, I thought were pretty impressive. Now here's where it's gonna get really exciting and fun. Because we have a 6-core, 12-thread processor, streaming is absolutely capable. So the first thing that I did is use Twitch recommended stream settings in OBS. So you can see here that we're going to be running this at 720p at 30 FPS because I don't want to put basically any duress in the system, at least with these tests. So that's what we're shooting for, which is actually still pretty standard for a lot of streamers. Now, in doing these tests, and after getting everything set up, you are going to have to compromise on some of the graphical settings in some games, which I'm going to go over, but the majority of these titles, which are esports titles, really performed very well. So let's dig into those.
Now, for the purposes of this recording, I just wanted to let you guys know that I tried to run the FPS benchmark, but it kept crashing when I was streaming. So I decided just to put it up in the top left. But what's incredibly impressive here is that first off, in CSGO, we are getting anywhere from 80 to 100 FPS consistently while we're streaming. And yes, you can tell that the stream is definitely losing some details. There's a little bit of fuzziness around some of the pixels, but honestly, it looked a lot better than I anticipated, and we're able to get quite a few frames per second, which obviously I wasn't actually expecting. Alright, so the next game that we're going to test here is Overwatch. Now, you can see the stream on this game, even with the CPU preset set very high, isn't honestly that great. Now, FPS dropped down into the 50s while we're gaming, so the recording looks just fine, but as terms of the stream, it really wasn't able to keep up with what was going on. So, this is a game where basically you're either going to have to sacrifice your graphical settings, or you're going to have to increase the CPU preset up to basically the fastest it can go if you want to get a consistent stream in this game. Which of course brings us to the king, Fortnite. Now, the FPS never dropped below 60, which is awesome, but as you can see from the stream, there's definitely a little bit of choppiness. Now, in order to get rid of this, you would definitely either have to go up in your CPU preset to the fastest available, which would mean that you're going to lose out detail in the stream, or you're going to have to go down to a lower setting like 1480 if you're going to be streaming for that resolution. So it's one of those things where you're either going to have to give up a little bit of your graphics or a little bit of the details, but either way, it actually is viable if you want to stream this game with this system. Now, for all you MOBA lovers out there, you know, your League of Legends, your Dota 2s, I wanted to show you kind of what you can expect. Now, this again is at the highest preset for 1080p, and as you can see, we are still getting a little bit of choppiness. So what I drew from these tests is that most modern games with this CPU, while technically it is fast enough, you're going to have to compromise a little more than I was willing to in order to get probably a very, I would say, perfect or consistent stream, but the point is that it's still possible to do.
So there you have it, guys. This gaming streaming system, which you can build yourself for $160 or less. The best part about this system is that the power source in here is a 300 watt, meaning that there are brand new AMD and NVIDIA GPUs, the 1050 and the 550 and 560 come to mind, that I believe are 300 watt TDP, meaning you can find those for cheap, and using the system you can get even better performance for cheap. And if you're able to find one of these workstations, or there's actually a bunch that take that that CPU, then you can find them. If you can find it cheaper, you could even build the system cheaper potentially. The thing that we're going to be doing, and obviously in ending this part one, is let's talk about the pros and cons. So the cons obviously is there's zero upgrade path. This is a one-off machine that'll probably be viable for at least another year, maybe two, but it does allow you to get gaming streaming on the cheap, and it's something that you, using used parts, should be able to find it. You may be able to find a better deal across the board. So this is part one of this video where I want to show kind of the bare minimum of what you want to do. Now part two is this: what would happen if we were to upgrade the power source and go to a slightly more powerful GPU? Well, that's exactly what I plan on doing. We're going to be putting a 1063 gigabyte in this system with a 500 watt power supply. So I'm going to get that all figured out, and part two of this video should release soon. But I'm going to kind of, you know, cast some predictions here and I think that performance is going to be actually pretty good. I think we're going to be able to stream at 720p at 60 FPS, that we're going to be able to play all modern titles at high settings with no problems. That's just my guess, but I have a good feeling about it because I think that we were surprised by the performance that we got out of this video with this system, and I think that by simply updating the GPU and power source to supply that, it's going to have a pretty dramatic jump in basically performance. Anyway guys, I hope you liked this video. I certainly loved making it for you. It's one of those things that's fun to do, these budget builds. Really, I think they're really valuable because there are a lot of people who can't throw like $1,200 into a brand new GPU, much less a new system. You could build literally like 6 of these for a new NVIDIA 2080 Ti. So anyway, that's kind of how I feel about it. But in terms of as always, thank you to all my patrons who give me the real life money to support my channel. You guys make it happen in a big way. Thanks to all my Twitch subscribers. Remember, if you're a Twitch sub or patron, you get your names put at the end of my video as a way to say thanks. So consider supporting me that way if you'd like to. Remember that if you use my Amazon affiliate link, whenever you buy any of this stuff through Amazon, which I don't know if you can buy any of this, but maybe, you could basically support me that way as well. And as always guys, if you like this video, leave me a big thumbs up, but if you didn't, go ahead and leave me a thumbs down. But remember to hit that subscribe button and bell icon. YouTube's algorithm continues to screw us over. And as always, I'm gonna make these videos whether you watch them or not, but I hope you do, and I hope to see you next time here on Geared Inc. for part 2.